The vast conference chamber hummed with tension, its crystalline walls reflecting the holographic displays that flickered with data and diplomatic tensions. Captain J. Park stood alone, a solitary human figure surrounded by representatives from dozens of alien civilizations. His dark eyes scanned the room, noting every subtle movement, every barely concealed look of disdain. The Galactic Confederation had summoned humanity for what they claimed was a formal hearing, but Jay knew better. This was an examination, a judgment disguised as a diplomatic meeting. Alien species from across the known universe peered at him, some with curiosity, most with open contempt. Kirill, the emerald-skinned representative from the Trilarian system, spoke first. His voice was a cold mechanical sound that seemed to slice through the air. Humans are a young species, violent, unpredictable. Your technological advancement is impressive, but your social development remains primitive. Jay remained motionless. He had prepared for this moment, studied every possible scenario. Behind him, a small delegation of human diplomats and military advisors watched carefully, their hands subtly positioned near communication devices. The conference chamber was a marvel of alien engineering, a perfect sphere suspended in what seemed like infinite space, with transparent floors that revealed the endless starscape below. Each representative sat on a floating platform, their species' unique environmental requirements carefully maintained by advanced holographic technology. "We have studied your species," continued another representative, a crystalline being from the Vorex system. "Your history is a chronicle of conflict, war, destruction. You have nearly destroyed your own planet multiple times. How can we trust such a species with galactic responsibilities?" Jay's mind raced. He understood their perspective, but he also knew something they did not. Humanity's greatest strength was not in its technology, but in its ability to adapt, to learn, to survive against impossible odds. The chamber grew silent. Hundreds of alien eyes focused on the single human representative. Jay knew this moment would define humanity's place in the galactic community. One wrong move could mean isolation or worse. His uniform was simple, dark blue with minimal insignia, designed to be both functional and diplomatic. Unlike the elaborate, often ornate clothing of other species, human attire spoke of practicality, a reflection of their nature. "The Galactic Confederation has reviewed humanity's application for full membership," announced the Central Arbiter, a translucent being that seemed to be made of pure energy. "We find significant concerns about your species' compatibility with our established protocols." Jay knew the statistics. Humanity had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. They had only recently developed faster than light travel. Compared to civilizations that had been exploring the universe for thousands of years, humans were children. But children grow. And sometimes they grow faster than anyone expects. The holographic displays began showing humanity's most violent moments: wars, conflicts, environmental destruction. Each image was carefully selected to paint humans as a dangerous, unstable species. Jay watched, his expression unchanged. "Your species consumes resources at an alarming rate," Kirill continued. "You fight amongst yourselves. You destroy environmental systems. You are not ready for galactic participation." What the alien representatives did not show were the moments of human compassion, the scientific breakthroughs, the ability to unite in times of global crisis, the capacity for incredible sacrifice and innovation. Jay knew he had one chance to change their perception. "We are not perfect," he finally spoke, his voice clear and steady. "But we are learning. Rapidly." The translation systems worked instantly, converting his words into multiple alien languages and communication protocols. But the meaning was clear. It was a statement of potential, of promise. The conference chamber seemed to hold its breath. Alien representatives exchanged glances. Some seemed intrigued. Others remained skeptical. Kirill leaned forward, his crystalline features reflecting the holographic displays. "And what makes you believe your species deserves consideration?" Jay's response would change everything. "Because we are here," he said simply. "Because we have survived. and because we are not finished growing. The conference continued, but something had shifted. A subtle change in atmosphere, in perception. Humanity had just planted its first diplomatic seed in the galactic garden, and seeds, given the right conditions, have a remarkable ability to grow. The first signs came quietly. A series of communication blackouts along the galactic rim, small research stations going dark, entire monitoring networks suddenly falling silent. Commander Yuna Kim noticed the patterns first. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, connecting invisible dots that most others missed. Something was coming. Something massive. The initial report seemed impossible. Entire planetary systems were being erased from existence, not conquered. Not colonized, simply removed. As if they had never existed, alien military leaders gathered in emergency sessions. The Galactic Confederation's most advanced defense systems began mobilizing. Massive warships prepared for what seemed like an impossible confrontation. J. Park studied the incoming data with a cold, calculated intensity. The invasion force moved with a precision that defied conventional understanding. No communication, no demands, just pure methodical destruction. Deep, space monitoring stations captured fragments of images that made no sense, massive constructs that seemed to bend reality itself. Ships that were not ships but something more, living machines that consumed entire worlds in moments. They're not interested in conquest, Yuna whispered to Jay during a late-night strategy meeting. They're performing systematic elimination. The first major confrontation happened near the Andromeda border. An allied fleet of 12 advanced civilizations met the unknown threat. 12 fleets entered the combat zone. None returned. Transmission fragments told a terrifying story. Weapons that didn't just destroy, they unraveled molecular structures. Ships that regenerated faster than they could be damaged. An enemy that seemed to understand every defensive strategy before it was implemented. Panic began to spread across the Galactic Confederation. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years suddenly realized their complete vulnerability. Technologies that had seemed invincible became obsolete in moments. Admiral Hyun Choi reviewed the battle recordings. Each engagement followed the same pattern. Total, complete destruction. No survivors, no negotiations, just systematic elimination. We're dealing with something beyond our current understanding, he told the assembled leaders. This is not a war. This is extinction. Entire planetary systems began evacuating. Millions of species were suddenly homeless, running from a threat they couldn't comprehend. The galactic highways became rivers of desperate refugees, carrying whatever memories and technologies they could save. Yuna's research team discovered something strange. The invading force seemed to be targeting specific technological signatures. Not random destruction, but purposeful elimination, as if they were hunting something specific. They're searching, she told Jay. But we don't know what. The Galactic Confederation's most advanced defense systems began to crumble. Civilizations that had believed themselves untouchable were being erased in hours. Advanced shield technologies became useless. Weapon systems failed before they could be deployed. Jay understood something the other leaders didn't. This was not a conventional invasion. This was systematic removal. Communication networks collapsed. Entire communication arrays went dark. The invasion moved with a speed and precision that suggested something beyond normal technological understanding. We're not dealing with an enemy, Jay told the remaining leadership council. We're dealing with a force of complete elimination. Refugee ships carried stories of entire worlds disappearing in moments. Cities that simply ceased to exist. Entire civilizations reduced to quantum dust in the blink of an eye. The invasion moved like a wave of absolute destruction. No pattern, no mercy, just complete systematic removal. Admiral Choi looked at the holographic displays. Entire sectors of space were going dark. Civilizations that had existed for millennia were being erased in moments. We need a different approach, he said quietly. Humanity, once considered a primitive species by the Galactic Confederation, was now the only hope. Their unpredictability, their ability to adapt quickly, might be the only weapon left. The invasion continued, relentless, calculated, removing everything in its path. The research facility buzzed with an electric tension. Jay Park stood before a group of scientists, military strategists, and technology experts. Maps and holographic displays showed the invasion's progression, a wave of destruction consuming everything in its path. "We can't fight them with traditional methods," Jay said simply. Dr. Mina Lee, a brilliant neural systems expert, had been working on something unusual. Her team had developed a radical approach to combat technology that seemed almost impossible. "We're going to hack their communication," she explained, "not their systems, their fundamental understanding of conflict." The concept was simple but revolutionary. Instead of matching the invaders' technological might, humans would use psychological warfare in ways no alien civilization had ever considered. Small teams of specialized human units began preparing. They weren't traditional soldiers. They were thinkers, strategists, people who could see patterns where others saw chaos. Yuna Kim developed a series of adaptive communication algorithms. These weren't just computer programs. They were living systems that could learn, adapt, and respond faster than any known technological network. The first test came unexpectedly. A small human task force encountered an invasion squadron near the Orion cluster. Instead of engaging directly, they sent a series of complex communication signals that seemed nonsensical. The invasion ship stopped, momentarily confused. That moment of confusion was everything. Human strategists had discovered something remarkable about the invading force. They operated on pure logic, absolute predictability. But humans were different, unpredictable, chaotic. Dr. Lee's team had created neural link systems that could process information in ways no machine could understand. They weren't fighting. They were thinking differently. Military leaders from alien civilizations watched in disbelief. Human units were doing something impossible. They were turning the invasion's own logic against itself. "They're not destroying," one alien commander observed. "They're disrupting." Jay's strategy was simple. Make the enemy question its own existence. Create scenarios that defied logical understanding. Use humanity's greatest weapon, creativity. Small human units began appearing in unexpected locations. They would transmit strange signals, create illusions, introduce mathematical paradoxes that would temporarily freeze invasion systems. The invaders had never encountered an enemy that didn't follow expected conflict patterns. Humans weren't trying to win. They were trying to make the conflict itself meaningless. Yuna developed communication viruses that could spread through the invasion's network, not destructive viruses. Philosophical viruses, bits of human complexity that would cause systemic confusion. "We're not fighting," she explained. "We're making them think." Entire invasion squadrons would suddenly stop, recalculate, question their fundamental programming. A moment of uncertainty that could last seconds, but in technological warfare, seconds meant everything. Dr. Mina Lee's team had discovered something profound. The invasion force operated on absolute predictability. Humans introduced absolute unpredictability. Military strategists from other civilizations began studying human tactics. What seemed like chaos was actually a sophisticated form of warfare they had never encountered. Jay understood the deeper strategy. Humans weren't trying to match technological power. They were introducing a new form of conflict, one based on creativity, adaptation, and fundamental uncertainty. The invasion began to slow, not because of firepower, but because humans had introduced something the invaders couldn't calculate: pure, uncontrolled human potential. Small human units moved like ghosts, transmitting signals, creating disruptions, introducing complex psychological warfare techniques that seemed to bend the very understanding of conflict. "We are not fighting," Jay told his team. "We are making them understand that conflict itself is a choice." The galaxy watched in amazement. The species once considered primitive was now showing an approach to warfare that defied all known understanding. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement, and the invasion was beginning to understand that some enemies can't be defeated with technology. Some enemies can only be understood. The Orion cluster burned with silent intensity. Space itself seemed to ripple with unspoken tension, as human and alien forces prepared for the most critical battle in galactic history. Captain J. Park stood on the bridge of the experimental combat vessel. Its design was unlike anything seen before on a living machine that could adapt faster than the invasion force could calculate. "We have one chance," he said quietly. Yuna Kim's fingers danced across neural link interfaces. Her mind was simultaneously connected to thousands of combat units, each one a potential game-changer in the massive confrontation. The invasion force approached. Massive constructs that seemed to eat light itself. Technological monstrosities that had consumed entire civilizations. But something was different this time. Humans had been preparing. Not just with weapons. With something far more dangerous. Understanding. Dr. Mina Lee's adaptive combat systems were revolutionary. Each human unit could transform its tactical approach in microseconds. Where traditional military forces followed rigid strategies, these units moved like living thoughts. The first wave of invasion ships entered the combat zone. They expected total submission, total destruction. They found something else entirely. Human. Combat units moved in patterns that defied traditional warfare. One moment a defensive formation, the next a complex mathematical disruption that confused the invasion's computational systems. Admiral Hyun Choi watched from a command center. Alien military leaders stood beside him, their previous skepticism replaced by a growing sense of impossible hope. "They're not fighting," one alien commander whispered. "They're thinking." Each human unit carried neural link technologies that could predict and counter invasion strategies before they were even implemented. It wasn't about firepower. It was about understanding. The battle transformed from a physical confrontation to a complex psychological warfare that stretched the very limits of technological comprehension. Invasion ships would suddenly stop, recalculate, their perfect logical systems encountering something they couldn't process. Pure human creativity. Jay understood the deeper strategy. Humans weren't trying to destroy the invasion. They were trying to make the invasion understand the fundamental complexity of existence. Tactical. Units moved like living algorithms, transmitting signals that were part communication, part psychological disruption, creating scenarios that the invasion force couldn't mathematically resolve. "We are introducing uncertainty," Yuna explained to her team. "And uncertainty is the most powerful weapon." The Orion cluster became a battlefield of impossible complexity. Traditional weapons became useless. What mattered was adaptation, understanding, the ability to change faster than the enemy could calculate. Human units began using techniques that seemed impossible, transmitting complex mathematical paradoxes, creating technological illusions that would freeze invasion systems for critical moments. Dr. Mina Lee's most radical innovation was a neural link system that could temporarily introduce emotional complexity into purely logical systems. The invasion force encountered something it had never experienced: unpredictability. Small human units would appear, disappear, reappear in locations that defied logical understanding. Each movement a complex dance of technological and psychological warfare. The invasion force for the first time began to hesitate. Alien military leaders watched in a mixture of terror and growing respect. The species they had once dismissed was now showing a level of warfare complexity that challenged everything they understood about conflict. J. Park's voice came through communication channels, clear, calm. "We are not your enemy," he said. "We are something you cannot understand." The battle transformed, no longer a physical confrontation, but a complex dialogue of technological and psychological potential. Invasion ships began to retreat, not because they were defeated, But because they encountered something more dangerous than weapons, they encountered pure human potential. The Orion cluster fell silent. But something had changed forever. Humanity had just shown the galaxy that true power isn't about destruction. It's about understanding. The conference chamber felt different this time. Where once humanity had been viewed with suspicion, now every alien representative watched with a mixture of respect and wonder. J. Park stood at the center, no longer just a representative, but a symbol of something greater. Kirill, the emerald-skinned representative who had once dismissed humanity, now approached with something resembling humility. "You saved us," he said simply. The invasion had been stopped. Not through overwhelming force, but through a complexity of thinking that no technological system could comprehend. Humanity had transformed from a dismissed species to the galaxy's unexpected saviors. Admiral Hyun Choi presented the final battle reports. Each data point told a story of impossible adaptation. Human units had not just fought, they had fundamentally changed the understanding of conflict. Dr. Mina Lee's neural link technologies had become the new standard across galactic defense systems. What was once considered experimental was now essential. Yuna Kim stood beside Jay, representing the next generation of human strategic thinking. Their approach had not been about destruction, but about understanding. The Galactic Confederation began restructuring. Humans were no longer invited members. They were now essential leaders. Their unique approach to problem-solving had become the new diplomatic standard. "We never wanted to be conquerors," Jay explained to the assembled representatives. "We wanted to understand." Alien civilizations began studying human history. They discovered a species that had survived impossible challenges, a civilization that had transformed itself multiple times, always adapting, always moving forward. The invasion force remained a mystery. But humanity had shown that even the most complex threat could be approached with creativity and understanding. Refugee. Worlds began rebuilding. Human technological teams worked alongside alien civilizations, introducing adaptive reconstruction techniques that were revolutionary. Dr. Lee's research teams developed communication systems that could help traumatized civilizations heal. Not just technological solutions, but approaches that understood psychological complexity. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that transformation. Kirill approached Jay during a quiet moment. "We were wrong about your species," he admitted. The words carried the weight of entire civilizations. Diplomatic protocols were rewritten. Human representatives now sat on every major decision-making council. Their ability to think beyond traditional boundaries became their greatest strength. Yuna developed training programs that taught other species the human approach to problem-solving. It wasn't about having the most advanced technology. It was about understanding the potential within complexity. Admiral Choi reflected on the journey. From a species once considered primitive to the galaxy's strategic leaders, humanity had not conquered. They had transformed understanding itself. The first joint galactic reconstruction efforts began. Human teams worked alongside alien civilizations, introducing adaptive technologies that could help worlds recover from the invasion. "We are not superior," Jay would often say. "We are simply different." Technological exchanges became a new form of diplomatic communication. Humans showed other species that innovation wasn't about having the most advanced system, but about the ability to adapt. Research facilities across the galaxy began incorporating human thinking models. Universities developed entire departments, studying human psychological and technological approaches. The invasion had been a test. Humanity had not just passed, they had redefined the entire concept of survival. Kirill watched a human reconstruction team work. Their efficiency, their creativity, their ability to find solutions where others saw only problems. "We called them savages," he said quietly to another representative. "They showed us what true intelligence means." Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as partners. Not through force, but through understanding. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere, in the vast complexity of space, something was watching. Learning. Understanding that true potential comes from the ability to see beyond the expected.